Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here at Book Passage for our virtual events. We are really happy that you tuned in. We know you have a lot of things going on, but we really appreciate it and we really think it's worth your time. So thank you for joining us. We thank to our loyal supporters out there who have been involved with Book Passage for the past decades. Thank you so much to our loyal supporters. And if you are a new viewer, well, welcome. We hope that this will be the beginning of a long relationship with Book Passage. Book Passage has two locations. We have our store in Corte Madera. We also have our beautiful store in the San Francisco Ferry Building. And both stores are open for business 7 days a week. So you can come in for your browsing pleasure, buy all your summer books there. You can order online, or you can actually call us and we will answer the phone and you can purchase your books over the phone. I know that's old fashioned, but we still do that. So those are lots of ways you can support Book Passage. And I also just want to remind any business owners who are viewing with us today that books make the very best gifts for your staff or for your clients. So if you are interested in bulk orders, corporate orders to buy books for your staff or for your clients, please consider going through Book Passage. We can offer very attractive discounts. We can often get signed copies of books, and we can usually get, depending on the order size, the author to do a Zoom call with your staff or clients. So please consider this. And if you are interested, just give Book Passage a call and say, I'm interested in corporate orders. We will get right on it and serve you. So Book Passage is very proud to bring you this excellent programming. We want to remind you to view our website for lots of up-to-date events. Some of the exciting events coming up that I want to mention are, we have a signing with renowned chef Alice Waters in our San Francisco store on Saturday, July 16th at 12 noon. And Chef Waters is releasing the paperback version of her New York Times best-selling book, We Are What We Eat. We also have renowned researcher and author Michael Pollan, and he will be in our Corte Madera store on Saturday, July 30th at 1 p.m. Michael will be discussing his latest work, This Is Your Mind on Plants. Tickets to this in-person event are still available, so please take a look at our calendar. You do not want to miss any of the exciting and wonderful events and classes that we have going on in person and online. So here at Book Passage, our mission is to enrich, engage, and inspire. And Book Passage has been a Bay Area institution and a family-owned business for over 40 years. So again, a big thank you to our supporters out there. We hope we can continue to serve you for another 40 years. Well, we all just celebrated Father's Day this past Sunday. And as the celebration ends, Alison Fairbrother brings us her exciting new novel, The Catch, about a daughter's relationship with her father, deep family secrets, and intimate family drama. A Goodreads Best Book of June 2022, an Indie Next Pick, a Book Passage staff favorite, and will be a bestseller. The accolades this book has received are long and many, and it's hard to believe that this layered coming-of-age story is a debut novel. Alison Fairbrother is an associate editor at Riverhead Books. She worked as a journalist in Washington, D.C. before getting her MFA at Stony Brook University. She lives in Brooklyn. She is young and talented, and I cannot wait to see what she brings us next. Alison is joined today by Susan Minot. Susan is an award-winning novelist of Why I Don't Write, short story writer, poet, and screenwriter. Her first novel, Monkeys, was published in 12 countries and won numerous prizes. Her novel, Evening, was a worldwide bestseller and became a major motion picture. She teaches at Stony Brook University in New York City. These two were teacher and student, and she conducts private writing workshops. Her book, Why I Don't Write, is available at Book Passage as well. So it is a great honor and a privilege that I can welcome to our Book Passage virtual stage two very talented writers, Alison Fairbrother and Susan Minot. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was a lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
So I think we're going to take over now, Alison.
That sounds great.
Congratulations. Yesterday was pub date.
It was. Thank you. Very exciting day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with Cheryl. This book does not feel, I mean, what does a first book feel like? I don't know, but it's so accomplished. It doesn't feel like a writer who is finding her way. It's so assured and so wise. I have to say, as Cheryl said, you were my student in, I want to say 5 years ago, but it was probably 10.
It was in 2015 and 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Not quite 10. That's good. Yes. And, you know, a writer or a teacher always has a moment when the writer, you get the email, you haven't seen the student in a long time, much as you enjoyed working with her, saying, I've got a book coming out, would you look at it? And you're always just hoping that you're going to be happy with it. And so I knew in this, with the catch, that in the first 2 pages, I was not only relieved, but very excited for you. It's
Thank you.
It's full of humor and Italo Calvino talked about the importance of velocity in a book, and as for a storyteller, and that's on full display here. I think a lot of books today go on too long, but you make the most of every page and every sentence, and it's fantastic. So, but before we just kind of talk about this and that, why don't you please read from the book so people can get a flavor of it?
I would love to. Thank you, Susan. And thank you so much for those lovely words about the book. You know, I took several of your classes. I think I took your class 3 times. I loved it so much. So it means a lot to me to hear you say that about my work. Thank you. I'm going to read for a couple of pages from the beginning of the novel, chapter 1. My father, a minor poet, celebrated holidays out of season. He couldn't get custody of all 4 of his children at once, so he moved the fall, spring, and winter holidays to the heat of summer. A man who had fathered 4 kids with 3 different women was unusual in our Maryland town. Neighbors gossiped and strangers commented. My father struggled financially, and I suppose he could have resented the way we tethered him, but he didn't. Over and over, he brought us into his world. The first holiday I remember was summer Christmas. I was 7, shy and compliant. Our neighbors swam in the Chesapeake and grilled hot dogs. We sat inside and heaped a fake fir tree with tinsel and chains of cranberries. We knew Christmas in summer was odd, but we didn't care. In fact, we liked it, or at least I did. Getting to celebrate with my father in the wrong season was far superior to not celebrating with him at all. He was the kind of parent you wanted to be with, and on a holiday he took such pleasure in the details. Once he lifted one of my baby half-sisters up to press a snowman cookie cutter into a roll of dough, and in that moment, when her shirt rose and her arms stretched out, and everyone was oven hot and overexcited. I thought that if I ever had children, I would scramble up the holidays too, not because I would need to, but just because I could. Dad's second wife, Barbara, the woman he married after he divorced my mother, would go upstairs after dinner to give my two half-sisters a bath and put them to bed. She was like the head nun at a nunnery, a grim tactician, her hair always in a bun, and she absented herself from me as much as possible. Because I was the oldest and she wasn't my mother, and because my real mother was then far away in Philadelphia, I was allowed to stay up late with Dad. I sat by his knee and listened to him strum his guitar and sing Jimmy Crack Corn, which I later learned was racist. Easter came in summer too, in July. Dad bought dye kits from Walmart and we dropped colored tablets into plastic cups, adding vinegar and watching the dye swirl through the water. He was so enthusiastic about the whole thing, as if he were a scientist trying to get his children interested in his chosen field. There were a few happy years of Easter egg hunts, our cheeks fat with chocolate, Barbara wiping my sisters' mouths with wet napkins, until the year of Dad and Barbara's divorce, when he lost patience with the flimsy egg holder and dunked his egg directly into the cup, staining his fingers iridescent purple. My half-sisters, then 4 and 3, paced our father's new place, sniffling and listing all the things they missed about their mom's house, the stuffed animals that hadn't made the half-hour trip to visit Dad, and a favorite bedtime book called Randy the Hippopotamus. I didn't miss Barbara at all. I thought of her alone in the bathroom I would never see again, removing pins from her bun, drawing herself a bath and letting the water out at 7:45 p.m. exactly. Dad and I let my sisters splash in his new tub as long as they wanted, until their skin was mushroomy and they'd finished soaping all their Easter rabbit figurines. After they were tucked in bed, exhausted and pink, their eyelids fluttering because of chocolate or dreams. Dad put his purple fingers on my shoulder and said, "You bring out the best in me, Ellie." The first time I met Colette, who would become wife number 3, was the following year at Summer New Year's. We all wore oversized blue glitter sunglasses and we painted signs that read, "So long, 1999. Dad made raspberry fring-frongs, juice and ginger ale with a raspberry floating on top. I am certain he named them. The grown-ups' fring-frongs were topped with gin. If Colette was nonplussed that we were ringing in the millennium 4 months earlier than everyone else, she hit it well. When you were married to my father, or when you were one of his children, you got with the program, because that was what everyone else did. And the program was always exciting, so you never really minded. Colette, though, did she mind? She must have known what he was like. The word boyish was frequently in play, and it was an appealing description, because how many women married older, divorced men, only to find themselves soon taking care of them in ways they had never anticipated? But a boyish man, a perpetual boy, would last a long time. He could grow older with the beautiful, girlish woman he loved, and together they would have a family, and together they would have a life. Colette, did she think about any of this? I remember she spread newspapers on the kitchen table and made popsicle stick picture frames with my half-sisters, the family she had inherited. She asked with genuine interest whether I had a crush on anyone at school, and I told her about Ronnie Devine. I tried to hate her for encroaching on my territory as Dad's closest confidant, but mostly I didn't take her seriously. She had slim Irish looks and dark wavy hair. She knew which plants to mash into pastes and boil into tea, but she didn't read books and she never knew where her keys were. She was like a medieval village herbalist. I didn't think she would be around long.
I'm laughing because every other sentence there's something funny, Alison. And I said this to you before separately that I hope that people who read this book realize that just because it's funny, and it really is funny, it's also very profound. And I'm feeling more and more as I get older that humor sort of delivers profundity and wisdom in a way that over seriousness doesn't as well. So I not only congratulate you on that, but I just want to point out how hard it is to do. There are moments in this book when something starts to feel a little sentimental, and then you stop it with humor. You save it, and it just reiterates the sort of feeling that there is this intelligence behind this narrator. She's kind of wondering, she's hoping, she's a wiseacre about some things, but she is trying to kid herself about others, sort of holding on to certain emotional beliefs. And that's really what I saw as the kind of terrain of this book. So I wanted to ask you, the book, it sort of speaks for itself. But it's interesting to ask writers things, about it and how it got there. And I was wondering what was the first, I was rereading Annie Dillard's The Writing Life, those beautiful essays about writing. And she goes, it's the beginning of a book that the writer needs to throw away. And so I'm wondering if you started out with something else and how it drifted, and if you want to tell us just a little bit about the development of the book.
I would love to. Thank you so much for what you said about humor. I think that so often in literary fiction, we feel that novels have to be really somber and staid in order to be taken seriously. And I really disagree with that. I think that a great novel should represent, even if it's about a serious subject like grief, that it should represent the full range of human experience. Even when you're grieving, there are things that are funny and paradoxical and surprising. And so I think putting that range of emotion into a book is really wonderful. And I seek out books that do that. So I was really trying to write into that model. And so I'm so grateful to you for appreciating it and pointing it out. And about the beginning, I threw away so many beginnings. I knew for a long time that I had a kind of obsession with thinking about losing a parent in one's early 20s. And I think that the 20s are such a difficult time. I mean, they're like vibrant and electric, and you're thinking about who you want to be and what you want your future to look like. But there's so much uncertainty, there's so much instability. And I think that I was interested in the experience of a character who's looking ahead to the future and sort of trying to define herself, but then loses a parent. And so is kind of thrown into the past. And I think that grief is a really important and interesting laboratory of feelings about the past. So that kind of juxtaposition of being in your early 20s when you're trying to separate from your family, but then you're sort of thrown back into thinking obsessively about the person you've lost and who they were to you, that was really interesting to me. But I tried to come at it from so many different angles. And it took years, I think, to get the beginning of the novel right, where I felt that it had the right tone and the right velocity, to use your word. So hats off to writers who work through their craft this way. I had no idea it would be so difficult to write a novel, and I was really humbled.
No one would ever do it if they knew what it really was.
That's right.
You sort of start off and then you realize, oh my God, it just,
right.
it takes a long time. So yes, that's a good description of trying to it takes a while to get there. You know what you want it to be about. I think it's also about, well, like you say, someone in their 20s trying to figure out, what her orientation is like, and sort of who she is. And I like also how, we feel that we don't feel she's lost at all. We feel like she's got a pretty good, take on, this boyish father who's married to all these different women and these sort of half siblings that she has. And all that is a great kind of backdrop for the things that she has had to grapple with. So that was all sort of fascinating. And the portrait of the father is really great. I don't think there are as many kind of father-daughter books as there are mother-daughter books or father-son books. So you're filling in an area there too, also. You work as, I'm asking sort of outside of the book kind of questions, but you work as an editor and following, in the footsteps of Toni Morrison, right? Like, and everyone's like, it's so great you work as an editor also. And she's like, I have to, like, I can't support myself on books. And that was true for most of her writing life until she achieved all the greatness that she deserved, I think. And I'm wondering how that, it's like teaching and writing, editors writing, how that do you think helps your writing or how it hurts?
It's a great question. Thank you. I think that it really helps my writing. It's such a privilege, I think, to be working with an author sort of on the ground floor of their book. You're getting in with them often as an editor in a really early stage of the manuscript, which is a really exciting time. It's a time similar to the early 20s. I mean, it's a time of so much possibility. And I think the job of an editor is really to help grow a manuscript up into a book, and that collaboration, it can be so fruitful and interesting. And I think for a lot of my life, I thought that writers were very siloed. I thought that they worked behind a closed door and they produced a perfect book and then they brought it out into the world. And so it's been such a wonderful enlightening experience, to have taken classes with writers like yourself and then to work with writers in my job where I'm getting to see the work that goes into not just the plot and the characters and the richness of the language, but also thinking through what a book is trying to say, what a book is trying to do in the world. And that's a very special thing, to be able to identify that as an editor and get excited about it. I think sometimes editors can see a book in those deeper ways. They can see what a book is trying to do, sometimes even before an author. So it's been a real education for me, and I think it's really enriched my writing life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you see the process of, I think a writer can get lost in the weeds, or I don't think a writer can. A writer does get lost in the weeds of her book, and to see the process of something becoming more clear and things that you have to sort of get rid of, and in the service of the book, it's no longer about, oh, this is just a wonderful bit. It's like, well, that's fine, but does it fit in with the book? And all those the sort of way down the line kind of choices that get made is, I think good to experience. There are things you can't jump. You think sometimes, why can't I just jump ahead of myself on that? Like, why didn't I know that it should have started right here? And I didn't need this other character. But you have to go through the brush. There's So that was another thing I wanted to ask you about. And this is kind of along the same lines, but it would have been a different dynamic going on. That I know you went to graduate school, and I'm wondering what you got out of that. I mean, a lot of people say, well, you can't teach anyone to write, which I think is true, but there are graduate schools in writing in which you can, I would say, learn a lot about writing. So I'm curious to know what your experience was.
I got so many things out of graduate school. I think that it helped me take my writing very seriously, that I had committed to these few years where I was going to be studying it. And that alone was a big step for me. I wasn't fully committed to thinking of myself as a writer until I enrolled in the program and started taking classes. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me to really sort of commit. And then I think the incredible sophistication in the reading of my professors was amazing. The way in which professors would bring in snippets, sentences that they loved, paragraphs that they loved, and sort of deconstruct them. And it was sort of worshipful. And that also the seriousness with which my professors and peers approached the texts were really wonderful and really illuminating for me. And I think also a sense of the importance of readers, of finding a community, maybe it's one person, maybe it's a few people who really understand your work and want to see you through that long, many years, in most cases, many years process of honing a book. It's so important, I think, to have someone be willing to, as you say, if you get in the weeds, sort of steer you out of them. And sometimes that's an editor or an agent, but often I think it's a friend, maybe someone who isn't a writer, but who has a really wonderful reader sensibility. So I think those are the three things I took from graduate school that I, carry with me in the rest of my life.
Yes, I think that for writers who, if you're determined to keep at it, that those things come to you eventually. But in graduate school, you get kind of a more intense, intense version of that. So you don't have to wait and learn the lesson over a long period of time. It's in, and the importance, which I don't think it's always, this is what goes on kind of behind the screen on the other side of the writer, which is the attention to sentences, to the words, and how important that is. I mean, so many, most readers read a book and they're like, I want to know if I care what's going on and if I'm charmed by it and if I like the world it's in, and hopefully they're not paying too much attention to structure of the sentences and the different rhythms, or they're just being swept along in the storytelling of it, right? But turns out there's a lot you can learn about that, right? There's a lot you can study that, particularly, in studying literature and seeing how it's been, done throughout history. And then you can sort of steal things from all writers, try to do that too. I was very proud of you for using nonplussed in the correct way.
Thank you.
Because everyone usually uses it, and you even see it in publication, in people always using it as if to mean I'm not affected at all, whereas of course it means the opposite. I mean, you think it should be nonplussed. You're nonplussed. Just no, it means frantic. So
right.
Well done.
Oh, thank you. Little teacher moment
Proud
here.
of my student. Yeah. So some of the other things, the father-daughter relationship here, and I was wondering if that made you, in that exploration, thinking about parents, and if you started to have, I mean, I know you did, that's why I'm asking this question, have other thoughts about parenting as you were writing the book.
Definitely. I think I was writing about a charismatic man, a charismatic father figure who was sort of warm and loving and charming and delightful. But, he had been married many times and had children with many different women. And
As
at one
charismatic men often do.
That's right. And I think, at one point, the narrator, Ellie, thinks that, her father has been sort of split up into these different sized father pieces. And her whole life, she feels as if she's been competing for the biggest pieces of his attention and his love. And I think that, it really made me think about how, because fatherhood isn't as connected to masculinity as, say, work life or a spouse or your career, I think many men, including Ellie's father, sort of feel that they can opt into parenthood to the degree of their liking. And of course, this is unfair to the female partner in the case, the female parent in the case of a heterosexual partnership. But it also means that the child is less likely to sort of know the full human that is the father, especially in cases of divorce, which I was writing about in The Catch. I think that divorced fathers tend to see their children less culturally, right? It's sort of a standard. And because of that, it means that anyone can sort of be fun and charming and exciting if you see them only part of the time. So that's, I think, that where the stereotype of like the fun dad comes in. And it really made me think about, writing into this book made me think about the problem of not being able to see the full parent. And in Ellie's case, it was only after her father died that she was sort of able to take him off this pedestal. She had valorized him. And even when he first died, her instinct was to valorize him. But how much of that valorization was sort of already baked in because of this dynamic? So that was something that was really important for me to explore and sort of think about and contrast that with her relationship to her mother, Rachel. I think Ellie knows that she can sort of go to her mother's and flop down on the sofa and be critical because she knows that her mother's love is unconditional. And so I think exploring that dynamic, exploring the different cultural standards between male and female parents was something I really wanted to address.
Yes, and there's a sort of beautiful development as we watch that happening with Ellie, seeing how she's maybe not quite valuing her mother as much. But slowly but surely, and really valuing the father, and then slowly but surely she started to things dawn on her because she's becoming more grown up and seeing things. Yeah. Was there I love the title, by the way. Do you want to tell us what it is? I don't think it gives anything away. It's a very good metaphor in two different ways, subject-wise and poetically. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so happy with this title because it did feel like it had some layers to it, and I love when a title can do that. It has a layer of, there's a sort of important talismanic object in Ellie's life, which is her father had this prized possession that was a baseball. And part of the book is about her sort of discovering what that baseball meant to her father and using it to sort of find out who her father really was. So there's a kind of mystery related to the baseball. And so The Catch relates to that baseball. But on a more metaphorical level, I was trying to play with the different meanings of the sort of different catches inherent in growing up. I think there's like a catch to loving someone because you have to accept the parts of love that don't always make you feel good. There's sort of a catch to growing up in that you have to overcome your family despite being shaped by them, which is really hard to do. And then I think the greatest catch of all is perhaps that, you know, no one can sort of decide who you're going to be except for you, you know, despite anyone's best model or influence or mentorship or parenting, you know, it's all up to you. And that does feel like a catch. And I think we learn that catch when we sort of go off on our own for the first time, when we're living apart from our families. And then on sort of the most literal of levels, the father, Ellie's father, James, is a poet. And his most famous poem is called The Catch. And that poem is the sort of first clue that the reader gets about his identity and sort of who he was in a larger way. So there was a kind of catch within a catch within a catch, I hoped. And that like Russian doll quality to the title was very exciting to me. Yeah.
And even within that poem, its most famous poem, it personally means something extra to Ellie because she feels that it's about her, right? Yeah. Catching something from her father. So it's
exactly
the two sort of general meanings, you know, catching the ball, but then there's a catch to that. They're almost opposite, right? And I love it when words mean a title can mean the opposite thing. You know, there's a Tom McGuane title. It's sort of not quite the same, but Keep the Change. You know, it's like, wait, keep the change, but keep the change. You know,
yeah, right.
I mean the sort of flip thing, and the catch is like that too. It's a very interesting expression. I wonder if people have it in other languages. You know, there's a catch.
Question.
You know,
Right.
It's very sort of American and you know, it also speaks to all these various adjustments that this girl has to do. I'm going to ask you to read just a little bit more, though I did want to say one line that I thought, you know, this is your sort of deadpan humor. Ellie is having an affair, not to give away, because it's revealed very nicely in the story. You know, you just think she's a boyfriend, and then it just is sort of slipped in there, and like, oh, you know, that's very skillfully done. So I just gave that away. But just the line I really liked, Alison, is the thing, as a chapter begins, the thing about married men is that they are never available when you need them. It's very funny. It's really good. So do you want to just read a little more for people who maybe are joining later, and they can, you know, I would say not as much, just so that, but it's good. Actually, I want to read something before you do, because it's to me, it's just one paragraph, and it to me is it just showcases your kind of atmosphere, your humor, the sort of, you know, feeling of hope that this character has at the same time. You know, it's just lovely. It's just a little scene when she's just finished work. Okay. But also you're also making commentary on things. So she's leaving her office where she works for a news organization, which she's very funny about, where they're all the male reporters they're playing poker or something and talking. After a few hours, I called it quits, leaving the male reporters to their long night of saying the things they really wanted to say, but couldn't when a woman was around. Outside, I unlocked my bike from the heavy metal grate surrounding the press club's sculpted green bushes. During the day, 2 million people swarmed to DC from the suburbs, filling the metro seats and sliding their cars along the Beltway for 7.5 hours of tepid governance. Very clever. But at night, downtown felt like mine alone. I'd always loved staying up late. The night and its dreaminess suited me. All the stately marble buildings nearby, the White House, the Wilson Building, the Department of Commerce, were lit up in gold spotlights, showing off for an audience of no one. It was one kind of distinctly American boasting, show, not substance. Anyway, lovely.
What an honor to have you read that. Thank you, Susan.
You go in and out and you do a lot of things.
I loved writing about DC. You know, DC is such an interesting place. And it's a place that I think is really, it's so much about power, and power is sort of everywhere you look in various forms. So it was an amazing setting for me to think about writing the character of a young woman kind of finding her power. And learning that her power is in sort of making different choices, you know, than her parents, and how she can overcome some of the emotional inheritances. And I thought that was a lovely contrast with DC, which is such a power-hungry place. It's such a place that sort of runs on the unpaid or barely paid labor of young people.
Right.
So, you know, it was a sort of rich setting, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Did you want me to read a little from the...
Read more? I'm wondering about time-wise. If there's other things that we want to talk about, let's just look, there's Cheryl coming on. I also wanted to point out another thing going on in this book, which is there's a little bit of a detective, detective novel going on in here. I mean, it's not to find out who killed the butler, but
Right.
It's this sort of sleuthing, and it's someone who I spent probably half of the books I read during the pandemic were detective noir, murder mysteries. There's a reason why we love them, and why trying to find something out is such a good age-old storytelling thing to have in there. So yeah, do you want to just read maybe just one more page that you were going through? Or?
I lost my place. I'm so sorry.
Okay, wait. I'm going to ask you to read something else. It's just one page. Page 95.
Page 95.
And start. It's. I'm going to set it up. Ellie is looking to a place where people are looking for a roommate, and so she's come to sort of to be interviewed, right, for it. And it's just a very good description of her meeting these people. And I think just, start Adrian Clerk for a federal judge. These are just some of the people down to I said, the quote that you got quoted in the New York Times.
Okay.
There's a very famous quote.
That's right. Thank you. There's a very lovely and interesting tradition in DC of young people entering these group houses with, cheap rooms where you live with a bunch of people, but you have to be interviewed to get into them. So this is a dramatization of her interview.
That's hilarious.
Adrian clerked for a federal judge, and he seemed the most laid back of the bunch. He was wearing cowboy boots. Many displaced Texans, I had learned, wore cowboy boots in DC, even with their suits and ties, even sometimes with shorts, like a bat signal that alerted other Texans to their presence. So yeah, we can give you a quick tour and then we just have a few questions to see if you're a good fit, Catherine said. She was the blonde, leggy one, a social secretary at the Moroccan embassy. I hated that she'd repeated the term good fit. It conjured childhood trips to the mall, trying to stuff myself into various too small outfits while my mother watched. The house tour was brief. It had a grubby chic aesthetic. The furniture was ugly, but there were geometric prints hanging on the walls, candles and trinkets arranged pleasingly on the mantel, plants dangling in the windows. My bedroom, I'd already started thinking hopefully of it as my bedroom, was just off the staircase and shaped like a triangle. On one side was a mattress that looked as if it had been slept on by many people. Half of one wall was painted pink. We think the landlord once tried to paint and stopped, Adrian explained. I love it, I said. The interview consisted of 5 questions. 3 were about my personal habits. The 4th question was why I had decided to move to DC. I moved to DC so I could use impact as a verb, I said. The roommates seemed to like this answer.
Yeah, you can see it all. Very good. Really, really good. I'm going to see if there are any. If we forgot to say if anyone had questions, they could put it into the chat. And if anyone wants to do that now, we can look. I hadn't made that offer. Cheryl had said, can't wait to see what she's doing next. And I know I had said something like, I want to read everything that Alison has written, but I want us to pause for a moment and just focus on the book. Like, here's this book now. Don't worry too much about the next thing, but I'm just wondering if you're managing to start working on something else.
Thank you.
If it's sort of along these lines, or if you're going in a whole different place.
Thanks. I just started sort of taking notes for a new project, and I feel that that's such an exciting stage. You know, you haven't written anything that you feel terrible about yet. So you're in a place of great possibility. And that's where I am now. So that feels really wonderful. You know, I've been sort of immersed in this book for 6 or 7 years. So it does feel exciting to think that I could be in a different world soon. And I'm sort of relishing having a little bit more time later in the summer to do more thinking and maybe a little bit of writing. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope you get, I hope people tell you how much they love it.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful afternoon. What a great conversation between you two, and to see a teacher and student going, as equals. It's really quite remarkable. Folks, this is an incredible book. Again, as I said, it is a Book Passage staff favorite. We got advanced reader copies, so our staff has read it. We love it. We highly recommend it. It is on our staff favorite table when you walk in. This would be a great book for anybody thinking of, what should I read this summer? This is the answer, The Catch by Alison Fairbrother. It is fabulous. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is a wonderful way to find out new books and new authors. We appreciate your support. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Come into the store and say hello. And thank you again to Alison Fairbrother and to Susan Minot. And buy the book, The Catch. It is wonderful. You will be thrilled to have it. You will recommend it to your friends.
We show it.
There we go. Yeah, it's beautiful cover. It's just great. So again, thank you so much. We stand behind this book. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Congrats.
you.